Hi, Terry here. I just got in from the town meeting. It was very nice. Over 600 townspeople were there, which is quite unusual for our town. We have, I think, about 9,000 as a population. So that's still less than 10% of the town who turned out, but it was nice to see that many people show up and stay for most of the meeting. Very few actually got up and left after the override question was handled. There were 19 warrant articles on this town meeting agenda, and we passed nearly everything with a positive vote. And I was glad for that too. Our committees, our commissions, all of the people who give their time week after week, month after month, year after year on some of these boards deserve a really loud applause for doing such a great job. We really only have to come in, listen attentively, ask a few questions if we're confused, and then vote. It's a very small ask for a very large project. So tonight, we passed the bifurcated budget. We voted on a budget that would just meet the expenses that we paid for last year, basically the same top dollar. But then we put an amendment or an attachment, I forget which it was, to that original budget that would include funding that an override of $6 million would allow to be added to our budget. It's very unusual in a small town in Massachusetts to have an override of such size approved by the townspeople. And the reason we had so many townspeople turn out this year is because that was quite a large Prop 2.5 override to seek. And passing it tonight at the town meeting was only step one. Step two comes next Monday when we turn out to vote for town elections, town officials running for various positions, and the override for $6 million. Of course, voting at a town meeting used to be wide open. Everyone could see what you were voting. We voted by raising our hands. But about 2 years ago, we got electronic clickers, and that's how we vote. And so it is fairly private, even though the people sitting next to you might look over your shoulder and see what your vote is, or you might be sitting within a group of friends and discuss what you're voting for. So tonight I walked into the high school where we have our meeting, and I didn't see any of my friends whom I usually sit with. That's because there were so many people there. I got there about the same time as I usually do, about 10 minutes of 7. And there was a little bit of a line when I was there, but not much. Just took a few minutes to check in. And I wound up walking into a nearly 3/4 full auditorium. And one of the firefighters saw me and directed me to go down front and sit in one of the first 5 or 6 rows where fewer people gather until the end of the meeting. And by the end of the meeting, those rows were filled as well. And the cafeteria, which doubles as our overflow room, was also filled. And I don't know what they did with the people who were still waiting in line to get in. But we started the meeting at 7:15 rather than right at 7. And the meeting ran, and we just got out at about 11:15. But we got through all 19 warrant articles, and we positively passed the override suggestion, the budget amendment, the budget attachment, whatever it was. So that passed. So that means it will be officially on the ballot next Monday. Ballots have already been printed. It would have been already on the ballot next Monday anyway, whether we approved it tonight or not. But approving it tonight makes it officially on the ballot. And the real vote comes next week when we will vote to see if we pass the Prop 2.5 override of $6 million. Now, $6 million doesn't sound like much if you're in a large town or you're in a city and your budget is proportionately a great deal larger than our small budget here in town. I think we're in the 30,000 range. No, I'm sorry, 30 million range. So 6 million was just, what is that, a fifth of our total budget? That's a huge increase for us to pass in 1 year. So I don't know if it will pass next week on the ballot. But I'm optimistic, because if it doesn't pass and we have to go with a zero-based, same as last year's budget with this year's expenses, this year's inflation, this year's troubled budget on the federal level and the state level, our budget is in no more trouble than the other budgets, but it's troublesome to me. I just want us to pay our bills. If the town has a bill, it's up to the town to raise the money to pay the bill. And that's what this override is asking us to be responsible for and to do. And so I'm glad 600-something people showed up tonight. I'm glad that I sat with a whole different group of people tonight. I met some new friends, and I helped some people who were maybe at their first town meeting or maybe haven't been for a while and have come back because this override is so consequential. It was a very well-run meeting. Our regular town moderator wasn't there tonight, and so we had a substitute who was clearly prepared for the substitute role of moderator. Maybe he was experienced from another position that he has had in another town. I don't know. I didn't know the man, but he ran the meetings very well. And I was impressed with how well the audience behaved. There was no shouting or screaming or threatening or whining. Everyone who had a question had a legitimate question. Everyone who presented a motion or an amendment to a motion presented it responsibly. The moderator handled it professionally, and everything got done in a little more than 4 hours. Or maybe a little less than 4 hours. No, I think it was a little bit more. And it's done for the spring. We'll have another fall meeting, but that's not until fall. So next week we have to all get together again, not together, but separately, and vote. Have our elections in the elementary school gymnasium. That's where we vote. We had our town meeting in the high school auditorium. And I think it's nice to use the schools in that way. Let people be in the schools, see the schools, realize they are the owners of the schools and they are responsible for the costs of the schools, the maintenance of the schools, the maintenance of the curriculum, the maintenance of a good, solid staff. To be there in the schools is to understand and get a sense of what school did for you and what you need to provide for schools to do for the next generation. So it was a worthwhile 4 hours. I'm glad to be home. Kitty's glad to have me home. I love you, Kitty. And I'll be turning in pretty soon, but I just wanted to give you the good news that so far the override has passed its first hurdle, and we'll see what happens next Monday. I'll keep you posted. In the meantime, you think about what you can do for your town. Maybe you can volunteer for something. Maybe you can help clean up something. Maybe you can just join one of the committees or the commissions or the boards, whatever you can do to keep your town running as well as it can run. and I'll feel good about what my town did tonight. Be well, everybody, and be good to others because they need you to be good to them. Take care. Bye-bye.